homeless man wanders into town and finds an opportunity by pitting two families against each other. Today, we look back at A Fistful of Dollars. Hello, welcome to another edition of The Look Back. I am your host, Joshua Klein, joined once again by my best friend, almost like a brother to me, Frankie. Please introduce yourself, Frankie. How are you doing today?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm glad to be here. It's your boy Frank B. We are here on The Look Back. I'm excited for today's film. Josh, go ahead, cue it up.
Yes, folks. If you, as you read in the description, today we're gonna look back at the film, a 1964 spaghetti western by Sergio Leon, A Fistful of Dollars. We're gonna talk about the film and see if it still holds up today. That's like the main focus. But we're gonna talk about the film a little bit, and then like break it down to a point where we see if it holds up. So Frankie, let me ask you a question here. Have you ever heard of this film? Have you ever heard of a spaghetti western? I would say.
Okay, so two things. I've heard of this movie. I'm not I don't want to say I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan, but like when he's one of the OGs in the game, right? So he's somebody you kind of got to do your research on, especially when you do film study, whenever you look at this genre in particular, he's one of the names that pulls up. So that being said, because of association, I've heard of it, but I had never actually sat down and watched it until we did this review.
So I have heard about spaghetti westerns. I'm a big Kurosawa fan, Akira Kurosawa, which is a name you're going to hear a lot in this review, especially when it comes to this movie, because there is a movie by Kurosawa that this film blatantly steals from, my friend. If you did your research, you might have known, but my God. And I didn't know it until watching. I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this plot before. Yep. But also, Quentin Tarantino is a big spaghetti western fan as well, and I've seen a lot of Quentin films, because Django Unchained has that spaghetti western style. The Hateful Eight uses the same composer that's used in this film in that one as well. I've always wanted to look at this film because I've always heard about how spaghetti westerns look at another director, John Ford, who's a very one of the most influential directors in the beginning of the golden era of Hollywood. He did a lot of westerns, and Kurosawa too, who's a Japanese filmmaker, and how like Leon kind of took these two elements of these two directors and made it into this spaghetti westerns, which is spaghetti westerns basically westerns done by Italians.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes. As we get into the film, there's a lot of, let's say, whitewashing a little bit of some certain characters because of location, but we'll get into that. But I might be showing my hand a little bit too by talking about that. How many times did you see this film? I watched it twice. I feel like because the first viewing was basically in shock that I was watching a movie that I've already seen before, but in a different way. So the second time was basically like, all right, I know what it's about now. Let's focus on the performances of Clint Eastwood. Let's see how Sergio like uses the camera and stuff like that, and not be distracted by other things.
Yeah, no, I watched it twice. I watched it like all the way through the first time because normally when we're doing these reviews, like to take a little bit of notes or whatever. But the first time I was so hooked on it, I didn't even have time to take notes. I was pretty much hooked from the credits on, which we will get into during the review. But yeah, I only got around to watching it twice.
Frankie, I think we tipped around, the TP right here, and let's get to the plot of A Fistful of Dollars.
So today's movie is A Fistful of Dollars. It is one of the earliest spaghetti westerns that was released, especially here in the United States. It stars a young Clint Eastwood as the man with no name, an outlaw, or a hero in our case, hell-bent on justice, who arrives in the fictional town of San Miguel on the U.S.-Mexican border. He pretty much shows up and they start shooting. It's your typical Western movie, has pretty much everything you would expect. Some elements that are, I'm going to say, dated, which we will get into. But the movie was released originally in 1964 in Italy and then re released and redubbed in 1967 so it could be released here in the United States. Through the years, it has been dubbed over, obviously, and fixed up. So if you watch the version that's on Amazon, you're watching like probably the best version that you could. It's got the audio as lined up as possible. This movie is the first in a trilogy, but we'll get more into that. Josh, when you reviewed yours in the beginning of the video, I really appreciated that you said he was a homeless man because I honestly just said that he was an outlaw and I didn't really know what his actual job title was in the movie. I even tried to look it up and it doesn't say. So that being said, Josh, go ahead and take it away.
So my very first thing I have to talk about in this movie, because it's in 1964, 1967, is the appreciation of a title sequence. In the modern time, you don't get a film where, the first, I would say, 3 to 4 minutes is dedicated to what the movie is, who stars in it, who directed it, who did what in it, and kind of gives you a vibe right away of what kind of movie you're gonna get. And watching it today, you get that Red Dead Redemption feel to it, especially with the Reds and the Cowboys and the music. Um, it really, when I pushed play, I was ready for this film.
Absolutely. I think one of the first things I sent to you when I was like reviewing it, like I know we always kind of go back and forth when we were watching it, but the first thing I sent to you was like the opening credits, like had me hooked because I'm a big Red Dead fan. That was one of my favorite games, like Red Dead, the original. Even going back to Red Dead Revolver, like that was one of the first games I remember like renting at like Blockbuster, which makes me feel super old to say, but that being said, it's all inspired kind of by that opening credits in this genre of movies. So yeah, when you said Red Dead, man, that hit it right on the money. I also really appreciated that it was showing the outlines of the characters instead of the actual characters. That was like kind of something that I don't want to say we've lost it over time. The cool intro to a film, like because I'm thinking the last movie I saw, which was coincidentally I just watched the Elvis movie. It didn't have like an intro like this. You know what I'm saying?
Nope.
And it had but it's a more modern movie, obviously. But this movie had like such an original intro. I'm like no matter what movie came after that, like it took a little bit of that, especially in the Western genre. Like I'm thinking Hateful Eight, I'm thinking Low Key, and Django even took some symbolism from it. So I loved it, man. I really loved that intro.
It's interesting that we're watching this. This is our first Western we're watching for the show, and a lot of the Western stuff that this movie does is taken from other films. So I'm very curious of if you're interested as we continue to do this, revisiting other westerns like maybe not Stagecoach, The Searchers. The Searchers pretty good. Uh, uh, My Darling Clementine, very good. It has a good opening sequence. You can almost look at the opening sequence to kind of understand what okay. So for the review purposes, I'm gonna call a man with no name Joe because that's what he's called by the pallbearer is Joe. So to me, he's Joe. Now he never confirmed that his name is Joe because I think the pallbearer guy is kind of fucking a little loopy and kind of is like in the middle with Joe because he benefits the pallbearer benefits by both families killing each other. Well, we'll get to there. If you look at the opening sequence, you see like a bunch of cowboys chasing one dude. You can almost like, all right, this could be how like Joe got ran off, probably from America or something. Like he is stumbling in this town, probably running away from something, outlaws or something like that. You could take it that, or you just took it like, oh, it's just just cowboys and all that shit. If you want to look deeper into that, because even the opening of the lines is like the sun, which gets called back in the end when Ramon dies. He looks up and you can see that same little effect and real lot like of the camera like looking around at the sun. And I was like, oh, that reverts back to the beginning. And I think that was pretty cool. But let's get to the beginning of the movie, and that's just where I really get the John Ford, Akira Kurosawa kind of feel to it. And you haven't seen these directors before, and we'll get to them. I want to wait. I didn't want to blow my load so quickly with these two directors. But John Ford and Kurosawa love showing like landscapes, like this, like backgrounds. Because when Joe pulls up, you can see the background of this like Western style. It's supposed to be in like the border of United States and Mexico. It's actually filmed in Spain, but the background I was immensely hooked because I'm a sucker for landscape shots. And he pulls up to a well where he sees two houses, and he's in the middle of the two houses, almost setting up the dilemma that he's going to be later in the film, because that's when we see the little kid. He's kind of like curious, watching the little kid going from a different house, like what the hell, and all of a sudden this fucking big ass dude starts firing at this little boy. You're like, whoa,
Yeah.
fucking bandit ass dude. You're like, and I just like how Clint Eastwood just doesn't say a word, just observant, watching, just kind of curious. He is a gray character. He will only do things that benefit himself, you know? So he's kind of like, and to me, he's obsessed. Like, he's very cautious about how he intervenes into a problem. He doesn't go in guns ablazing. He kind of assesses his surroundings a little bit, because I knew something was up when he looks at the window and he sees a woman. I'm like, that's a white woman. Like, that is clearly a white woman. And I'm like, is she supposed to be Mexican? Yes. And folks, the major thing about this film that I had an issue with getting over with is whiteface. Characters who are supposed to be Latino are not. And some of the makeup job are pretty horrendous and bad. You could just tell they just put dark makeup on. And it kind of took me out of the film a little bit. Now, there are a few things that got me back into the film, but yeah, when I saw that girl with her blue ass eyes, I was like, yo. but then I was, you find out that little kid's name is Jesus, and I was getting Mother Mary off this character like later on. Like, there's a scene where I was like, oh my God, this is Catholicism all fucking day. But what did you think about the opening sequence? Because I don't think Clint Eastwood's character, Joe, does not say a word until he enters the town. I think that's a good 4 or 5 minutes to the film where he's just kind of observing everything, taking everything in. Because he doesn't really.
Yeah. No, I mean, it opens up with him just drinking the water out of that little ladle, which I thought was actually pretty spot on for the time period. Like, because I'm a big history guy, that's something like I kind of was looking more for the historical accuracy of stuff like that, because that is what was going on during that time period. But what probably was not going on was a bunch of giant thugs shooting at a small child. Like, that was crazy. Like, don't get me wrong, it sets the tone very well, because that is like the kind of movie we're watching, right? We're in a town where there is no law. Like, the law is whoever has the most people on their side and the most guns, right? So it sets it up very well. And then, like you said, yeah, I did get a lot of the like Mother Mary vibes from this like angelic figure who is very clearly given like what I would call a very bad spray tan. But
Oh,
you said it better, like white face. I don't want to say like it's brown face. You know what I'm saying? Because like you can't. I don't want to say like the wrong terms. You feel me? But it's clearly like it's with the times. Like, there's a couple of things like we'll get into with the special effects, which I know you will talk about.
oh yeah. I mean, the blood looked pretty bad in some scenes, especially at the end when Esteban gets shot and he falls down from the end, and like you see the blood dripping down his face. I was just like, that looks like fucking ketchup. I mean,
It looked orange.
it did. Now, because you find out that this is an Italian director who shot this in Spain, that these are all European actors, and of course they're not going to pick Latinos. I mean, there's some Spaniards there, but I, but no, but this film apes from the film Yojimbo. It's a Kurosawa film where a samurai comes into town just the way like this does. He comes like a Ronin samurai comes into town and sees these two warring factions and goes, I can make money here. And that's what Clint Eastwood does. Joe does. He comes in this town and goes, huh. He knows a lot of dead bodies here. He's like, well, he knows the gangs. He's like, wow, there's pretty lawless kind of here. He was like, I can make money here because he was asking like, oh, who's the boss? Who's the boss? Well, there's two bosses. Oh, two bosses, you say? Oh, I mean, I can pit them against each other.
There it
He
is.
says, you got two faction families. You have the Baxters and you got the Rojos. And then you have Joe in the middle. Like that's kind of what he does. Like he wants to play both sides for his own benefits. Um, yeah. And okay, it really bothered me when we met the bartender, but the way his makeup job looked, he did not. It really takes you out of the whole thing. Where Yojimbo is like, it's set in Japan. There's no weird like Mexican United States border crap stuff. It's just a warring Japanese because it's feudal Japan and there's a lot of unruliness because of the situation in Japan at the time period it's depicting. So you didn't have to worry about characters not looking like they're supposed to because they're all in Japan. Where in this, it's just like they're supposed to play Mexican characters, and I was confused because it looks like okay, people from Texas were coming down and buying weapons from the Rojos, and they were buying liquor from the Baxters. And I was just like, all right, are the Baxters supposed to be Mexican or Americans? Because there were clearly some fucking white people over there, but their names weren't white. Like I was like, okay, all right, like I just have to accept it. But the problem was, it was taking me out of the film. But it's clearly, it wasn't until we met Ramon where I was just like, holy shit, that guy's good. And his introduction scene is where, because like when Joe is kind of looking around the town and kind of feeling out the two families, and I like the scene where he goes to the pallbearer and goes, "Get 3 coffins ready," like because when
Oh, yeah, no, he called his shot. He was like,
oh
yeah.
yeah, he knew what he was doing. When he was talking to the bartender, asking about these families, he's kind of getting a beat on. This is that's what I like about Joe in this film right here. He's observant. He's trying to get into like, oh, who's the strongest? All right, the Rojos are strongest. All right, so I need to go to them first. I need to prove myself to them and play them because like I can benefit from it, and plus they probably have more money. So when Joe comes into town first of all and meets these 3 cowboys, and I'm like, wow, the double in this one's bad. Like it was just funny because because the spaghetti westerns take so much from samurai films. I was just like, wow, like it's even doing the samurai martial art dubbing issues that you get sometimes where it's like the lip syncs are close but kind of off. Um and I was like, all right. So like they're being dicks. So when he comes back, he's like, all right. In Yojimbo, like he uses a samurai sword. And he like kills those guys, like, the 3, or I think it's been a while since I've seen Yojimbo. We'll get to it eventually, especially after this film. When Joe takes out these 4 guys, it lets you know, like, all right, he is a good killer. He is, because he even goes to the Rojos guys and goes, hey, Don, like, I want to work for you, but I ain't cheap. And to show his fucking power and how good he is with the 45, kills 4 people off the bat. I think that was a good, to see Joe be that good with a gun, lets you know right away that this dude is a badass.
Yeah, I thought it set the tone well that he just kind of pretty much like walked in, called his shot, told the coffin maker, who honestly was a very interesting background character in this film.
Yes.
He also sets some of the later themes up with what he says, where he's like, yeah, I kind of underestimated. He called for 3 and actually killed 4 people, which I think is kind of a running theme where like we see him as this badass, like killer, like rolling in, doing what he's got to do. But there's still like that element of, okay, like a lot of this is bullshit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know I might not live, but I'm gonna talk trash. Like I'm gonna live through every single bit of this. Like even when he was like it goes down to even when he's like shooting the gun, like he's shooting that fast because he's like, listen, I might get shot. I got to get my shots off.
Well, I
And
mean, you got to
he has
shoot that.
that
You
like
guys, you're
killer
four guys with
behavior.
a 40. You have four guys with you, and you have a 45. You got to shoot that motherfucker fast. I mean, you
Yeah,
got to be like pow 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 pow. And that's what he was
yeah,
doing.
no,
He's like,
he got it. He got his shots off. So that's what I'm saying. Like they set it up pretty well, man. I just loved that the framing of that scene where you have the one guy. He's like, so if this is like the screen, he's like right here where you see like his whole face, he down to the sweat on his face, right? But then you see his friends in the background like talking trash, and he's the only one kind of like, yo, he actually might shoot us right now.
what I like too is the way is like because the guy shot at Joe's horse, and he comes up and is like, you hurt my horse's feelings. You better apologize. They're like, ha ha, you're joking, right? He's like, yeah, I'm not joking. And
I
that's
mean,
when he knew that was fucking serious. And that's that's another thing about the film too is that the close-ups that Leon does really adds to the drama and really adds the effectiveness of the character work. I mean, Clint Eastwood only has like two faces he has, but they're effective because the way the eyes like sometimes I don't know who I heard it from, but somebody says like the acting really comes from the eyes. If you
yeah,
believe in the eyes, you're going to believe the acting. And I think what Clint Eastwood was doing with this character was like he letting his eyes like as like he's always chomping that cigar. And he's like, he's thinking like, interesting. Who's Mary Saul? Who's this? Don't talk about her. He's like, oh, okay. Like I need to know because you're clearly not telling me information that I like. If it wasn't important, you wouldn't tell me this way. It's like, So I like that introduction, and I like the introduction to Ramon. Like after he gets done killing these four guys, he goes back to Rojo's, gets $100, and once again it's Joe kind of being investigatory, like kind of like all right, trying to feel out the Rojos. What kind of operation they have? Who's in charge? So you find out that there's three brothers. You have Esteban, which is the younger brother. You have Benito, which is like the older brother, and he looks like really fucking old. And then you hear about Ramon. Now, Ramon, like everyone's like, oh man, like Ramon's a good shot. Like when you see the armor and you see all the HUDs, like, oh yeah, my brother shoots that uh, all the time when he's bored. So you're like, all right, he's a good shot.
mm-hmm.
Good. So when we get the introduction of Ramon, it actually surprised me too, because when the Mexicans are trading gold to the Americans, quote unquote, and then the quote unquote Americans were killing them, I was like, holy shit, what are the Italians saying about America that we just like kill people like out of nowhere? And they're just like, oh no, that's the Ramon. I'm like, oh, it was a setup.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. And then every time Ramon's on the screen, I am captivated with the guy's performance because he is evil,
yeah.
evil.
Yeah.
And I think is a great equal to Joe. I think they play off each other very well.
I think the best part of the Ramon intro isn't the fact that like we get what he is like he's the bad guy, you get all of that. It's the like the way that the music slowly kind of queued up with him because it's set up like obviously like you and I are big Star Wars fans, so like when you see a villain, like they always get that like big moment where it's like a slow build up and then it's like, yo, this is the bad guy. And like you hear that music kind of kick in and it was super slow. But then it gets extended out with every time he shoots his gun, with every time they're like going off on the during that like deal gone bad. Every time he shoots his gun, you kind of hear that little flute or whatever that instrument was. And you hear it for Clint Eastwood's character too. But I thought his was like perfectly set up. Like every time I heard it, I was like, yo, Ramon is coming. Ramon is doing something. Ramon's about to shoot somebody.
And the fact that when you find out like Mary Soul is like, oh, like Ramon's in love with her, then you find out that Ramon basically was like, hey, I like you. Well, actually, the story goes the Marisol's husband Julio was playing a card game with Ramon, and Ramon's like, "You cheated. I'm stealing your girl. Get the fuck out of town." Basically, he's like, "Look, I'm gonna kill you if you don't leave, and I want your girl, and I'm gonna kidnap her." And it was like, "Ew, that's like it just kept getting really rapey and everything else."
Yep.
So I loved how Joe played both sides. Like only gave them information enough to pin them against each other. So Joe sees the murder of the Mexican army, right? And the Rojos family is like, no one saw it. We dressed the bodies in like the same coats. So they let people think that they killed each other. Boom! Like they're gonna do the investigation. The investigation will show that they kill each other and they'll never come back to us. And that's when we'll be quiet. Let the Baxters think we're cool with them, and then when it's done, we'll fucking kill them. Call it a day. Because Rojos is all about power. They have the weapons and they have greed. And I think that the greed is basically power corrupts, and I feel like when you get that power, it really like I feel like them and like Rojos and Baxters were never cool, but I think once they killed the Mexican army, I think that's when it really jumped in the deep end because Ramon really felt himself. Like really felt himself. So the fact that Joe like even like pinned him against him, like using dead bodies, like, I found that interesting, using the dead bodies as a way of like tricking them and telling the Baxters like, hey, there's two live soldiers that are that have information about that. And that's why the Baxters will go out there. Then he goes to the Rojos and goes, hey, the Baxters found these soldiers and they're gonna tell on you. And they're like, oh fuck. So it's like not so like he tells them information that are lies. So while these two families are out like attacking each other, Joe's in their facility checking them out. And I've liked it that the the big guy's name is Chico. All the stereotypical Mexican names, Chico. So I liked how he used his gun to knock Chico out, where it's like he doesn't kill him. He's like fires at his feet, and then he then he hits him that door on his fucking head and knocks him out. I was like, that's funny.
Yeah, that's
And
pretty
the
cool.
whole time he's just looking for the gold, which is kind of a setup towards the end because he finds himself in that room again later on in the film. That's how he was able to. I got questions about that ending a little bit because I'm like, I might call some bullshit on something. Uh, but I like how we've cut back and forth of the Baxters and all them fighting each other, and I just love the scenery of the outside of them, like going on the horses, and we're seeing all the scenery that really adds to the film a little bit, seeing all that landscape.
Yeah, I thought it's interesting because like doing some of the research that I did for the movie, they were talking about how the Italian and I believe they filmed this movie in Spain. The hills out there look like how the old West used to look. Like I live in Texas right now, and I've been to like not like where this movie would have been set, but like the old West, like kind of southern Texas, stuff like that. It does look like that out there. So it's very accurate. Only thing that kind of throws it off is occasionally you'll see something like a little bit too modern. Like they wouldn't have had like running water and some other stuff that you do see later on in the movie. But one thing I thought was very accurate, and this thing was almost a character in and of itself. Did you notice that Clint Eastwood had a hand rolled tobacco in every scene?
Yes, yes, that is like okay. So I read that Clint Eastwood basically picked that whole outfit up, and that
Really?
when we get to the other two films, which we will, because we were gonna do the good and the bad and the ugly, but that's the third film. So I was like, it'd be interesting to go back to the first film and then pick them up as we go.
Yeah.
But the man with no name is always recognized by the poncho, which is from Spain, a Spanish, like a Spaniard poncho, not a Mexican that he wears. He came out like Clint Eastwood is not a smoker, but he felt like when he used when he put that tobacco in his mouth, he got into character, and you can tell every scene he had it on, and like he was always thinking. He would spit like he would even like chew off a little bit of it and spit it out. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So he always had it. So it's like in the character itself because like it's part of his outfit, and it got me a lot of John Morrison, not John Morrison. What's the character's name from Red Dead? John Morgan? No,
It's Arthur Morgan and
no, it's John
James Marsden.
James Marsden. I think. Well, Arthur. When I played the Red Dead Redemption 2, I feel like there's a lot of this film in it a little bit.
Yeah.
I got a lot of, but I feel like John Marston is more of the Clint Eastwood stereotype because I'm thinking of the first game, Red Dead Redemption. And that first town we go to when we with the sheriff, that town almost looks like this town a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, just a little bit. This had more Mexican features because of the stone houses and stuff like that. And the movie's quick. It's only an hour and 40 minutes, where Good and Bad and Ugly is almost 3 hours long. So I'm glad we'll get there eventually as we get more. And I want to add more westerns before we get back to the spaghetti westerns. I want to go back to old westerns, so when we go back and see these spaghetti westerns, you may be able to pick on some of the references, especially Kurosawa. We're gonna go back to Kurosawa and see, probably Seven Samurai. It's probably gonna be on the list soon. Um, but yes, and Ramon, the guy who plays Ramon's Italian, and actually, I looked. He is an actor that will come back in the other two films, but playing different characters, of course, because Ramon dies. And I love how they set up the rifle and the pistol, because the film show, like, every time Ramon uses that rifle, he's pretty freaking good with it, and he's pretty fucking deadly with it. So I loved. Okay, I don't love the ending. It's maybe a little hokey, a
Mm.
little bit. The fact that he puts that little body armor thing and he's like getting shot, and he knows that Ramon's only going to shoot the heart. I'm like, can we shoot the head? Can we
I was
shoot
about to
the
say,
leg? I'm tired of, like, come on now. Like, if you shot him in the heart a couple times, I think he's not going down. I mean, like, maybe shoot somewhere else. But
like, man, I thought it was a cool foreshadowing, right? Like, I like foreshadowing. I like when they do that kind of stuff because that was cool. It was it was very on the nose, obviously, but that was something that was for this time period, right? So I'm looking more at how did they execute with that, and they did it well. But he gets shot like 6 times. I'm like, after a while, like, even in the Mandalorian, like the Mandalorian has like impenetrable supposed armor to some extent,
yeah,
but once
Beskar.
he hits that two,
Yeah, Beskar.
yeah,
Beskar can only be defeated by, I think, by
but the
Beskar.
Beskar, yeah.
Right. A
But
lightsaber came and beat Beskar.
right, but they still said like, "Yo, this still hurts. Like I'm still
No,
getting
I mean,
shot."
yes.
Right.
Okay.
So that being
If
said, like Clint Eastwood's character is getting shot, and all those times he's like, "I'm good." Bam, we'd fall.
especially especially since we just saw him prior to that scene get his ass whipped because
Whip,
because
like literally whip.
Ramon finds out that Joe has been kind of double playing them,
Yeah.
because when okay, before that, okay, so so before that, the one that gives me the biggest Catholic scene is when the Rojos capture one of the Baxter, I think, a kid. And then Joe steals Mary's soul and takes him to the Baxters, and there's a trade-off. And this is the scene where we get a lot of close-up. We even get a close-up of Ramon, and in the backdrop, you see the cross. You see the cross. All right. And this is a review that the kid's name is Jesus. And I want to see Mama. And, like, you just see this white lady playing a Mexican, blue eyes, and she's like, my boy. And then just like, and she's looking at Clint Eastwood just crying, like looking at him crying. I'm just like, okay, that's supposed to be, because if you know Catholicism, Catholics really appreciate Mother Mary, and that's what I really got a lot, is the Catholicism of Mother Mary and the appreciation, the sacrifice that she did for Jesus or Jesus.
Like, yeah, because the kid is Jesus, the mom is Mary Soul.
I mean, Mary. I mean,
Mary
it's
Soul.
very
Like, you know
obvious.
what I'm saying? Like, it's
It's right
yeah.
on the
And on
fucking
top of
money.
that, wasn't the debt like then Clint Eastwood's character being Joseph makes sense. And then I forget what they said the other character's name too. It's biblical.
Julio.
Yeah, Julio I think is based on another name in the Bible too. So like either way, it's like very on the nose. But again, like Catholicism, like
Well,
Italy, like
Catholicism, well,
man,
Italians. I mean, where's Rome at? Italy. I mean, it
I
makes
was gonna say
sense
like
that.
it matches. It's just I didn't put that together the first time watching it, but now that you mentioned
Oh,
that matches.
oh, dude! The first time I watched, I was like, "Oh my god, this is so blatantly just like."
Yeah, you can see it. No,
Okay,
you can see it.
I would only change the ending. I would only like the film. I would only change the ending, and this is how I would change the ending. Instead of Ramon shooting Joe like so many times, make it one time. Make it one time, and it reveals he has the fucking thing. Like, I get it because we just saw the scene prior when they're at the party and he's pretending like Joe's pretending to be drunk. Ramon shoots the knight armor in a heart shape. So he's like, I always go for the heart. I mean, he's telling him, I mean, he's basically telling Joe, like, I always shoot for the heart because if you gotta kill him. If you want to kill somebody, you gotta shoot at the heart. I'm like, all right. So it's like, but you can use one bullet to symbolize that. I just felt like because he's just like, oh, and Joe's mocking him like, oh, you said shoot at the heart. You should shoot at the heart. You won't kill like, and I'm not. I'm not down yet. I'm like, all right, okay,
Like we got it.
yeah, but then Joe does show how the reason why a 45 is better than a rifle
Yeah.
because he was already locked and loaded. And was like, oh man, I'm ready, and you still gotta like cock it. Like, what the fuck?
Cock it, loaded, sit there and make sure you calculate your shot, all that. He talks all the way through it in the movie, and I thought that was great.
Okay, you called him in your summary. You called Joe a hero. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see that way because he got the Baxters massacred. That scene where, when Clint Eastwood gets caught and he gets beat up and he escapes from his captivity in the weirdest bullshit thing cuz all right, he gets beat up, they leave him alone and then the captors come back and all of a sudden there's a barrel on top of this thing and it rolls down and Clint Eastwood's like holding himself and he's like rolling down and then like that scene he's barely like being able to fucking move. I'm like, first of all, how the fuck did he get up there in the first place? Because when we left him, he was on the fucking ground. So how can we go from that scene cut to he was able to put this fucking barrel up so it can roll down and kill his captors to escape? That I have a problem with a little bit because I'm like, that takes away a little bit.
Yeah.
But I gotta admit that it's like, it's just a stupid action film. I shouldn't read into it. I'm like, but I'm sorry, but you cut one thing to another thing. Okay, but whatever. So when he escapes there and he hides behind the thing, the Rojos are like, oh, the Baxters must have him. The way they kill him is so fucking evil. So evil. First, they burn the house down, and then as the people are running out, they're just fucking opening fire. And Joe is watching this through, which I thought was pretty cool that he used the pallbearer and he's like laying in the coffin. He's like, "Get me out of here." I thought that was a good way to escape. I thought that was beautiful, smart on his part. And I just like how the pallbearers just kind of like laugh, like, "Yeah, like you're gonna get away with it," because I felt like the pallbearers on his side because they like I said earlier in this review, the pallbearer is also in the middle. He is benefiting from all this killing because what's that fuck? I keep forgetting the guy's name again. Savant Silavant Silavento. So like no one works here, and you can kind of hear a little hammer working, right? And Joe goes like, "Well, somebody out there begs to differ," and he opens it up. It's the pallbearer like getting a coffin ready. He's like, "Yeah," and the bartender guy's like, "Look, he's measuring you up. He's been doing this for a while. He's pretty freaking good at it. So like, business is fucking booming to making coffins. So of course he doesn't give a shit who wins. He just wants to make coffins. And I like how in the end of the movie, as it pans out cranes out a little bit and we get an overshot view of the town again as Joe leaves, you can see him measuring the dead bodies to get them ready for their coffins. I was like, yep, that man's fucking consistent.
Yeah, no, he's doing his job for sure. Man, okay. So I thought that it was interesting throughout the movie that they kept showing the pallbearer and some of the side characters in the village because, like you just said, they never expected the pallbearer to really be involved in things the way that some of the other characters were. I also really appreciated that during one of the little like when Clint Eastwood's character is getting beat up. Like I know we watched The Wrestler before, but seeing some of the stage falls in this, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like he did like a wrestling move, like where a dude like we haven't seen Black Dynamite, but I know you and I have both watched it. There's a part in Black Dynamite where a character gets slapped, and like the cut is so bad that you clearly see like a person to where like the actor is like 5'5", but you see like some 6'3" person get like thrown over a table. Do you get one of those in this movie? And I laughed out loud at that part. And then, like you said, just on a more serious note, I actually really appreciated when they set up the evilness of like even both sides, because the backers do some bad stuff in this too. Like they were shooting at people too, but the thing is, they set up the Rojos as like
The evil one,
the
the
evil.
badder ones. Yeah.
It's like they're both bad, but like you know what I'm saying. They showed one as like a we're just gonna rob you, we're not gonna kill you, but the other one's like yeah, we're gonna rob you, we're gonna kill you, we're gonna set your body up for some other stuff. Like
Okay. The only I would disagree with you here. The only thing that Baxter's do wrong is the four guys that he kills in the beginning of the film. What else does the Baxters do that deserve that death?
oh
Because they were unarmed. They were like, "Hey, we're done." Like as the fire is burning, you know, like the son and John Baxter comes out, and the mother, well, the mother comes out later, goes like, "Hey, we'll leave. Like this town's yours." and Ramon's like, "Fuck you," kills him while they're unarmed, and then the mother comes out and goes, "I curse you. I hope you bleed to death, you sons of bitches." And then she dies. I'm just like, God damn, that is so cold blooded. And I like how you have Esteban, the younger brother, just always cackling when evil stuff is being done. Ha ha ha. It's like,
dude,
fuck
his
you,
laugh in
dude.
and of itself was like a character because it would like come in at times where I'm like, I don't even think he's in this scene for real, but you would hear his laugh though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, it's all. I don't want to say a matter of perspective because like they do say that they were both doing bad stuff, but you don't. I agree with you there. They don't show the Baxters like killing anybody. They don't show anything. It's just kind of implied, right?
Yeah, John
So,
got them killed by
yeah.
playing both sides.
Honestly, yeah, I
Like,
agree with you.
I mean, because the only reason why the Rojos went over there to burn the Baxter because they thought that he was over there hiding. So, and he used the Baxters again, but prior to that, to you could say he was a hero because he saves Marisol, Jesus, and Julio, and basically like the get out of here, dog, get out of here, and all the money that he earned, gave it to them. The fight, like, I loved the scene where he tells the information from the Baxters about the soldiers that know information, gets $500. Then he goes over to the Rojos and goes, "Hey, there's some soldiers that are alive, and and they're like, hey, how much would it cost?" It was like $500. I was like, God damn, he just like making, and he just kept making money by using them. But then
Mm-hmm.
it just got them killed, and he just used that money to save this family that he had, the family from the beginning, that where he truly was in the middle of, kind of like in that situation. I think the only reason why he took very much interest in the town is because what he saw, and I think the question was, Marisol asked him, "Why did you do this?" He's like, "Hey, I knew someone like you, and no one helped." So I'm like, I wonder if, because I don't think we get. I think the other two films are not closely related to this one closely. I think they just have the same character kind of thing. Um, but it's possible you could read in that the Joe character went through a similar situation like this before, and then no one saved this person, and it led to death and tragic things. So this is him, like, I guess, saving Jesus and Mother Mary. Like, here, go on and fucking live your life, cross the border, go to America and live prosperly. But if you know America, they're now illegal, illegal immigrants, and therefore are bad. So whatever if you feel. It's funny because like they kept calling him Gringo and Americone. I'm like, fucker, you guys are white too. Like that.
I mean, I
Okay,
don't
I
know if
think
they said it back then. I've never heard that. Like, as long as I've been down here and been around Mexican people, I've never heard somebody say that. They just say,
Gringo.
like, I've heard the term, yes, but I've never heard somebody be called that.
Oh,
I
there's
also
that.
could maybe not be listening because once people start speaking Spanish, sometimes I'm just sitting here like, all right, like,
So I think we're winding down our talks from this film. So now, people, at this portion of the film, we're gonna go over how we're gonna answer the question: does this film hold up? Yes or no, and give our reasons why. Frankie, does this film hold up? Yes or no?
all right. So here's my thing, man. I went back and forth on this all day, and part of why I went back and watched it earlier today, I was looking for a couple of specific things. Does the movie, or I'm sorry, does this as a film hold up? Does it tell the story that it wants to tell? It does. However, there are some things that are going to take you out of it that, for me, make it not stand up. How, like, the stuff we talked about throughout, like I don't know if we're going to call it like brown face or whatever it was white actors playing people that were not white, right? That threw me off enough to where I'm like, nah, this wouldn't stand up nowadays, right? Am I saying the performances are bad? No, right? They were acting, they were doing what they had to do, but that didn't line up. And then some of the effects, like anytime they showed a machine gun, instead of actually showing like the bullets rip through a person, which obviously we see in modern day movies, it didn't really show that. It would just be like the person like, oh my god, I got shot, and then they would fall like in this weird way, and it kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. To where if it would have done it like one or two times, I'd have been like, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, no, even though I enjoyed the movie, like if I were to give it a rating out of 10, I'd probably give it like a 7. But I just don't think it holds up. The way that some of the effects are done, like even the blood, like we talked about, the blood was like literally orange in a couple of scenes, even like including including Ramon's death. It's like literally orange to the point where like it didn't even look like ketchup, it looked like paint. Right. So from that aspect, it doesn't hold up. But I can see how this started the genre, right? Like, just like, not saying these two movies are on the same plane, but because I'm in an Indiana Jones mood, this gave me the vibe of that first Indiana Jones movie where it was setting up something bigger, right? You got like the makings of a really great story. Obviously, some of the things got up to like this zenith at one point and then just kind of fell off at the end, which I know you will get into and like we've gotten into several times. But yeah, no, I can't say it holds up fully. I enjoyed it, but I can't say that it fully holds up. It's the beginning, though, just to taper my thoughts off. It's the beginning of the like Western genre to like from what I have recognized. It has all those elements of a Western movie, but I can't say it fully holds up.
Yes. So mine's a no. Definitely no. And one is it's because of the you kind of I don't know if I can forgive the not the actors not being the nationality that it's supposed to be. That really does take you through a loop, and sometimes it's hard to get into the movie today because like clearly these people are not Mexican, clearly. But my main reason of saying no to this film is because there's a better film that is doing the same story, and that's Yojimbo. That film is a lot better than this film. And matter of fact, Kurosawa's people sued Leon for this film and won.
Really?
So this film is a blatant copy of a better film. And that to me makes this film like if I had to pick between this film and Yojimbo, I'm picking Yojimbo. So yes, no, I don't need this film. This film does not hold up. It belongs in the 60s. But I can recognize a few things. Leon has a directorial eye. I love his close-ups. I love his shot scene, like the way he set up shots. The close-ups really added to the story. The movie's fun. I think if you watch it and kind of ignore the representation, I think you'll have a good time. Clint Eastwood is charming. The guy who plays Ramon is a perfect bad guy. It's a good, fun action film. But what we're asking today, we're not asking if this is a good movie. We are asking if this film holds up. It does not.
Mm.
It does not. And when we get to Yojimbo, maybe next season, maybe in season 3, whatever, we will revisit this. We will talk about this again, and you'll probably see why I picked Yojimbo over this film, A Fistful of Dollars. So it's like the great Randy Jackson used to say, it's a no for me, dog.
It's enough for me, dog.
So, folks, when two critics say no to a film, that gives it the rating of bury it. Basically means you throw it in the dirt, you throw it in the dirt and bury it forever and forgetting it ever existed. which is kind of sad because it's still a good film, but we just gotta. It can be lost in time. Bury it. So, any final thoughts as we close this other, as we do the closing captions of another great episode, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, end of a great episode. Overall, like I said, I actually really like this movie, man. I I'm starting to realize I'm a sucker for westerns. I like the cowboy era. I'm like I teach history, so that's kind of something I've been more connected to. But I really enjoyed some of the visuals. Like you said, the directing in this movie was very unique. It's something I've seen a lot of directors, especially like more recently. Some of the angles that Leon used have been used in movies recently, especially a couple of A24 films, which we'll talk about later. Later on in our season 2, season 3. But overall, man, love the movie. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. It is one of those like cult classic movies. Like I was talking to my dad about it. My dad and his dad actually watched it like back in the day. It was one of those movies that used to come on TV later on at night. So it's got its place in history, but again, it's one of those kind of got to leave it in the past. So that being said, Josh, your closing thoughts, sir.
To me, what makes a good movie, a great movie, I would say, is that a film holds. You can watch the movie no matter what time period, and it still holds up no matter when you watch it. That is the main focus of this show, is to find great movies from the past. Especially as we're recording this, there's a writing strike and an acting strike. So movies are going to slow down for a bit. Newer movies. So this is a good time, people, to watch these films with us and go back in the past and revisit some of these films and give them a look back and see if they hold up. So if you did watch A Fistful of Dollars, please comment your opinions about it. Am I wrong? Is Frankie wrong? Would you give it a yes? And if you say yes, it holds up, please in the comments tell us why. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification button because Saturdays at 6 p.m. you'll get a new episode of The Look Back. And Frankie, we have so much for the people, and I'm not even going to tell you what it's all entails season 1, but I know you'll enjoy it. So thanks for joining another great episode of The Look Back. I'll catch you at the theaters.